Hey, we're live. Sorry about that. Live. Locked on Baylor. Give me a second because I know none of you were watching right now. So I am going to tweet out the link because we are in about a 2 hour, exactly 2 hour lightning delay right now. So that's sick. And it's a good game too. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. There's me. Sorry. 16-7. Baylor leads right now at halftime. We've been at halftime for 2 hours. And I don't think anyone wants to go back in the stands. I don't think anybody wants to go back out on the field. But it sounds like from our latest update that is what's going to happen here. There's going to be a 10-minute warm up. So sorry, I really should have thought about this first. Questions, thoughts, and vibes. Okay, post is sent. Sick. I'm going to retweet it. And then we'll get going here. So I mentioned before I left the stadium, kind of what was going through my mind. And I talked about the, players not wanting to come back out on the field a minute ago. I truly believe that. And I don't even necessarily put it all on them. And what my biggest concern about this team is there's just not, the coaches just are not getting them ready to play. They're not getting them ready to play. And I think there's good coaches on the staff. I think there's great guys on the staff. I truly do. Really football smart people. I think Dave Rand is a genius when it comes to the game plan and the X's and O's, especially obviously on the defensive side of the ball, is where he comes from. But he has admitted it himself several times. He has struggled to kind of be the head coach and struggled to get his guys ready. I mentioned it on Twitter. He said it at least 3 times last year and hinted at it at week 1 in the loss to Texas State. But the games last year were at BYU week 2. They were at West Virginia, that Thursday night loss that put them at 3-3. And late in the season to make them go 6-4 at that horrific home game against Kansas State. They lost 31-3. And each of those 3 times he said something along the lines of, coming off the bus or in warmups or just in the final days of preparation here, I wasn't sure if our guys were ready to play today. And I remember him first saying that against BYU and just being like, well, that's odd. But I kind of chalked it up to being, young team. They come in with a lot of expectations. Maybe they're flying a little too high. They've got a quarterback who's only starting his 4th game at that point. Okay, it's not what you want to hear by any means, especially in a coach in year 3 and especially for a top 10 team at that point. But okay, fine. Then you hear it against West Virginia, and it's like, well, that's not good. And this was a much inferior team, and maybe it's that Morgantown voodoo, whatever the heck you want to call it, but that's not good enough. Not good enough. Can't have that again. And then he says it against Kansas State. And you're just thinking, when is this going to end, Dave? When are they going to be ready to play a game? This was that game against Kansas State was truly like their first championship kind of feel of the season. They had just come off. They had won 3 in a row. They had beaten the crap out of Tech. They had beaten OU on the road. And it was a long shot, but they had the Big 12 championship game. They had that in their destiny. They controlled that destiny. They needed to win the next 3 games. They were against Kansas State, TCU, and UT. So not easy. But at the first sign of any kind of, adversity or call for toughness to be a championship team, they got so flustered they played their worst game of the season. And here after the game, we're hearing Dave say, I don't think our guys were ready to play. And so it's just concerning. Sorry, guys. I got to look down on my phone to get the comments here. What happened to Sawyer Robertson? Honestly, Patrick, I don't know. It was clearly a very short-term injury. He was only out for 1 drive. He was throwing on the sideline. He wasn't the guy who's warming up with was only about 8 yards away from him, it looked like. It was not actually probably about 6 yards away from him. It was not very far. Obviously, you're not throwing more than about 10 warming up, 10 or 15, but he did not look like he was going to be able to throw it down very far. And look, I don't want to be the guy who is defending Sawyer yesterday and bagging on him today, but looked like the same old from last week. And again, I know he's far off from what he can be in terms of a quarterback for this team, but you'd expect some sort of improvement when you're going up against a defense like Long Island, barely an FCS team. And on the first 2 drives, we talk about quarterbacks who are putting it exactly only where the receiver can get to it, only where the receiver can make a play on the ball. That's a sign of a good quarterback and good throws. He made 2 throws on the first 2 drives that only the defensive back could make a play on, only them. And they both should have been picked. They weren't because you're playing Long Island. But he was 6 of his first 12. RJ Martinez comes in and, only 1 drive. I think he moved the chains once. It wasn't that much better. But, I would guess he probably is still hurt a little bit. Same with you, Patrick. I think he's probably still laboring a little bit from that ankle injury he had last week towards the end of the game. If it's a sprain, that's something that lingers quite a bit. Lingers for quite a few weeks. You can play on it, but it really limits your mobility. And honestly, I didn't think his technique and his mechanics were all that good today. I thought he was rushing and pressing. And with that, he literally had one play where he threw it and caught it to himself before trying to throw it again. He looked really flustered getting out of the pocket. Not the kind of command and poise that we saw the first half last week, which was the impressive time for him. How did we digress this much over the past 2 years? Great freaking question, man. Great question, Aaron. I don't know. I don't know. And I didn't expect this team to be a 10-2, 11-1, Big 12 championship type of team, but I expected a lot better than this. It goes without saying. I really did think this was going to be a team that, with the favorable schedule in terms of having 8 home games, I know we've said that a lot, but that is something that always benefits Baylor big time. Look at 2019 and 2021. Any coincidence that they were Big 12 finalists both those years? They had good teams, but it really helped that they played the Texases and the OUs at home. And this year, they have the favorable 8 home game schedule. UT at home, Utah at home, Texas Tech at home, all of those teams. And so you're thinking, okay, this could be an 8-4, 9-3 at the very best kind of team, even with some question marks. And they're finally going to the portal here. They're bringing in experienced guys to start. That's where I was at. I was really optimistic. I didn't think they were going to be worse than about a 6-6, 5-7 team. But obviously that seems about the ceiling right now. It has not been easy today. It looks like the game is just getting back started. So we'll keep it short here so we can pay attention to the game. But it looks like it's going to be a 1-2 after today. And I just don't see where 6 wins is coming from this team. And it is a golden opportunity because you have teams like West Virginia and Iowa State on the schedule, both home games. Both those teams freaking stink. They stink. And all we need to do is just suck a little. And it looks like right now we suck more than them. And that's what's really disheartening about this. So where's the digression, Ben? That's something I asked last week. Where's the disconnect, Ben? And it's been right in front of our face. And a lot of it has to be recruiting. It just has to be. And, we talk about the big names that they've lost, the Torian Yorks, the Trey Novosads, Austin Novosad, sorry. Those are the big names that just kind of fell through. And along with that, we just haven't brought in that caliber. It has definitely been a regression of Baylor recruiting to where we were probably about 10 or 12 years ago, where you were bringing in good 3-stars who will hopefully become 5-star talent. And we've seen that work, but this coaching staff is doing a tough job developing that. And there are a lot of young guys out there today. Bryson Washington, Dawson Pendergrass, both guys at the running back position. Freshman Carl Williams had an interception in this game, has an interception in this game, and a pass deflected. So those are guys who could certainly contribute in the future. But until they start developing these 3 stars into 5 stars, the way Matt Rule did, the way Aranda did with Matt Rule's guys at the beginning of his tenure at Baylor, this is where it's going to be still a disconnect. Do I expect to dive more into the NIL and the portal? Absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking to a friend the other day. There is no reason why Baylor should not be a big player in the transfer portal. In terms of these guys who are 4 and 5 stars and they're just not getting the reps, or there's a coaching change at somewhere like a Alabama, a USC, a Florida, an Ohio State, a huge program like that, and they're not getting what they want out of it. And they should be able to find a comfortable landing spot at a place like Baylor to come in, a program that consistently puts guys in the pros, that can compete for conference championships, and has what I think is a good head coach. I don't know why Baylor has not been able to land those guys in the portal. And part of it, too, to kind of push back on my own point, is with the transfer portal being so much bigger now, you are starting to see those guys go to other big programs, as it were. So, this isn't the biggest program, but Jaden Daniels going from Arizona State to LSU. Another one, this kid Buckner, starts at Notre Dame, starts his career at Notre Dame, and transfers to Alabama rather than a place like a Baylor or a Utah or a Washington or a North Carolina, something like that. So, yeah, I don't see any reason why Baylor shouldn't be better in that. And NIL, they're talking a big game. Max said earlier this week on, I think it was 365, he said, you're going to start to see that in a year or two, to see that product kind of come to fruition with the NIL. Hope he's right, man. Hope he's right. And they said they had the second most NIL money put into the program of any team in the Big 12. And so I think that's probably going into some sort of trust right now. Looked like Sawyer was okay on that play. He rolled out of the pocket, ran for a first down. So got to wrap this up in a little bit, but we got a few more questions here. Almost took the over in 7.5 wins. I did. I felt good about that. The us against the world attitude, it's not there right now. It's us against themselves. And again, I just didn't think this team came out with any kind of fire today. It's the simple things. It's defensively. It's keeping contained. I talked with Travis Roeder about it on Twitter. Travis said it perfectly. These guys don't want to come off blocks. They don't want to get hit. They didn't want to get out there and play a physical football game today against Long Island, which is really concerning. I know it's Long Island. I know it's 11 a.m. But you're the team. You're not the fans. And you have got to come into this game pissed off, man. You're 0-2. You got smacked in the mouth week 1, and you totally blew a golden opportunity week 2. Why are you not ready to come out and just knock the crap out of these guys? I just don't get that. I really don't. And so I don't know how they flip the switch either. I really don't. And it's going to be a long way for this group. I think it could be ugly next week. Texas is absolutely the best team on the schedule. There's even more question marks, I think, at quarterback than there was at the end of the game last week. And who knows? We got a whole full second half here. We're going to keep an eye on it. Either way, I don't think this is going to be a convincing victory just because of how they played in the first half of the game. And you look at the stats and it looks fine. You think, okay, this game's 28-7. It's not. It's 16-7. And but for a completely botched snap on a punt that goes out of the back of the end zone for a safety, you're talking about a 1-touchdown game going into the second half against a team that is in its 5th year of FCS, that has won 8 FCS games in their history. It's going to be a bloodbath next week, man. And there's a lot of things for Sark and UT to be looking at, specifically the star position, bringing pressure. That was almost an interception by Sawyer. Would have been a tip ball, not a best throw, but not necessarily his fault if it was going to go the other way. But not a good throw. Star position, Bryson Jackson has been really suspect in coverage. He's not been the only one, but that's something that they have been picking on. I talked about before the game, getting some penetration in this damn backfield, man. Last year, we said, okay, this was an awesome, awesome pass rushing team in 2021. They're bringing all these guys back. Even this year, you're bringing a Gabe Hall, who might be their only all-conference player. We haven't seen anything from these guys the last 13 months. Nothing. Byron Vaughn's made an awesome play in the first half to get the only sack of the game at the linebacker position. Nothing has been solid on this team, and it's just what I talked about last week. There's a disconnect there. If it's not one thing, it's the other. We'll see. Anyway, I said I'm gonna wrap it up. I think I've caught up on the questions here, so I am gonna wrap it up here. Y'all, thank you. I will have a measured reaction for Monday's show. If this thing goes totally haywire, we'll probably have some more content out tonight. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every day. We're going to have some great content this week. Texas Longhorns coming into town. Got some good guests in the works to come onto the show. Talk Baylor, talk UT, talk the direction of this team, talk the direction of the coaching staff. It's going to be an interesting one, but trying to take the positives out of today. It's tough to do so far. Baylor's on the drive right now. Would love to see Bryson Washington get some more touches. Let's see. Thank you once again for making us your first listen today and every day, brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions today, going there for all your job listings. I'm Cam Stewart. This has been, always will be, Locked On